What the fuck happened by Hillary Rodham Clinton? Or at least that's what I think it should be called. Because what the fuck? What the fuck happened? How could any of this have happened? Are we living in an alternate reality of some kind? Some insane alternate reality where a reality TV show host that doesn't even want to be president. He just simply wanted to boost ratings for The Apprentice and get Trump Tower built in Moscow. And yet here we are. He is our president. Donald Trump. I mean, really, how insane is all this? It's so insane that if you took all the events for the past 2 years and you put them in a book and you mailed them to all of America 5 years ago, nobody would ever believe you. Nobody would ever believe any of this stuff for a second because it's just too insane. That is the time we are living in. I'm not kidding here. We are living in the era of insanity. I don't know if you follow the news at all, but everybody's going freaking nuts. And perhaps not justifiably so, but understandably so. Because in all of human history, right now, the time we are living in, this is the most change simultaneously happening all at once. It is the most social and technological change every single second of every single day. It's just too much for most of us. It's like the treadmill under our feet just keeps getting faster and faster. And a lot of us just want it to slow down or get off, but there's no getting off. You can't build a wall to stop this. And people are going nuts. If you want to hear more about it, I highly recommend Martin Freeman's book, Thank You for Being Late. He'll explain it all. The madness, the eye of the storm that we are all in right now. I think the best example I can really come up with to get this all across is actually think of it as all of humanity, all of us, this is humanity's puberty. It's literally like all of mankind is going through puberty right now. I'm not kidding. I don't think I've heard anybody coin that phrase yet. But that's what it feels like to me. That's what it feels like what's going on. I mean, think back. Try and remember what it was like when you were a teenager once again. For your entire history. The most dramatic amount of change happening all at once. And it drove a lot of us freaking crazy at the time. But the only difference here being, as a species, we're not all getting nose rings and tattoos and listening to Marilyn Manson all night. No! What you see instead are things like Brexit and the election of Donald Trump. So that's what's going on, I think. And of course, a lot of us don't like it. You know, what a crazy roller coaster we're on. And people want to get off. Well, guess what? Too bad. But in no way does any of this take away the sting of Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016. I know, of course, not everybody voted for her because otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be reviewing this book. But most of the country felt devastated by her loss. The majority of the country voted for her. So seriously, finally getting to the book itself, what the fuck happened? You know, there's a lot of reasons where I really feel you should read this book. It really makes for a fantastic and insightful read to get things from Hillary's perspective. But not just to get her side of the story, but to really hear what she did to help her cope and get over her loss. Because we've all experienced devastating losses throughout our life. I highly doubt most of us have ever felt a loss quite like this. It really means a lot to me because what she said to get through it wasn't therapy or Xanax or anything like that. Just simply yoga and breathing exercises and walks in the woods. And personally, that's always been my philosophy too. I've always felt when you have tough times, that's the best thing to get you through it. Well, that and cold showers and walking in the snow. I'm such a huge fan of that too. You know, these simple, natural things you can do. So to also hear her say it, that's very reassuring to me. I mean, seriously, don't underestimate the power of just walks in the woods by yourself. If you don't believe me, I'll leave a link to a Wes Cecil lecture below, devoted entirely to the benefits of walking. Next, other than finding out what happened, it was also really nice to feel like you're actually getting to know Hillary finally. Because for the most part, like I need to tell you, it's just an accepted fact like gravity or the world is round. She is just an insanely guarded person. And on one hand, you kind of get it because her entire public life, other than Donald Trump right now, and I kind of think he deserves it. But, you know, other than him, can you really think of any political public figure that has been brutally attacked for decades and decades like Hillary? Because I can't. And it always started this vicious cycle where she's always trying to prevent herself from getting attacked, so she's always on her guard. You know, guarding is basically like hiding, so everybody thinks she's hiding something, so nobody trusts her. Then the press attacks her more, that just makes her go more guarded, and it's just, yeah. definitely one of Hillary's biggest flaws. Definitely, maybe one of those flaws like her greatest strength. Usually your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. Hers is definitely how guarded she is. So it's cool, this rare solar eclipse moment where it feels like she drops some of it and you get to know her. And you do. You really, if any Hillary haters read this book, I'd love to hear your opinion, because I feel after getting away from it, first of all, she's fucking funny, man. She's hilarious. Jesus. Like, she talked about she was at the lunch after Trump's inauguration, and this congressman came up to say hi to her, and this congressman had apparently repeatedly in the press called her the Antichrist. And Hillary writes in her book, she was thinking to herself, well, he used to call me the Antichrist, but I noticed he didn't seem to have any garlic or wooden stakes with him or anything you might need when fighting the Antichrist. And of course she calls him on it too. And I was like, that's fucking funny right there. And then this other time where I don't remember the context, but she said something about the election where she said, oh, if those Russians could just hack my subconscious, what they would see. I think this book made me really feel that Hillary Clinton is like this great, big, loving, and often pushy big sister, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna help you whether you like it or not. Which could be charming to some and abrasive to others. But I think perhaps how her armor is her strength and her weakness. I guess you could also say that about her pushy nature as well. Her nature of, I'm gonna help you whether you like it or not. I think that's Hillary. I think Hillary's cool. And then when she gets into it, when she really gets into talking about what she felt happened, why she lost, well, she gave a bunch of things, and they're all completely understandable. Like, first of all, in American politics, it is incredibly rare for either of the political parties to win the White House 3 times in a row. It's happened once in our generation with Reagan and Bush, but it's incredibly rare. So there's one uphill battle. 2, well, certainly the Russians didn't help. And James Comey didn't help either, but I think one of the major areas I disagree with her is that infamous meeting of Bill Clinton meeting the then Attorney General on the tarmac. Now, she basically plays it off as just some cosmic coincidence that Bill Clinton and the Attorney General of the United States, who's in the end in charge of investigating her email scandal, that it was all just a coincidence. But it's like, that's the one part I just don't buy. After reading this book, I stand behind her story about just about everything, but that one, not really. I was mad as hell about everything James Comey did. Oh, sure. God, especially, that bombshell, 10 days before the election? That was ridiculous. But later on, when I heard Comey testify and he gave his reasons for doing everything, why he felt he needed to do that because of that meeting Bill Clinton had with the Attorney General, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. But still, be that as it may, yes, James Comey did of course contribute to her loss. So clearly that was all working against her, most definitely. I also think personally one of the reasons why she lost was, often in her book, she compares her entire presidential run to walking on a tightrope, meaning that one mistake and she would fall off and that would be done. I don't think that was a good way to look at it at all. I really think she should have looked at it as a boxing match. I think she should have looked at it as the fight of her freaking life, because if she did, she would have thrown some more punches. She was just too guarded, too reserved, over-calculated, I would say. Where sometimes, honestly, where she feels that it would be detrimental to her as a woman to do this, Hillary just should have lashed out. She mentioned in her book that first in July, when Comey came out, and he said that everybody at the State Department, including her, did not do anything illegal, but they're all grossly irresponsible. She should have fought back. When Donald Trump was doing that pathetic impression of a T-Rex, that whole second debate, walking around or going, that stupid intimidation tactic, she should have called him on it. So I think maybe that's one of the biggest lessons we can all take from all this, from her devastating loss. And finally, of course, she talks about the times we're living in. The insane, out of our frickin' teenage minds time we are living in. And once again, like when she discussed all the things she did to help her heal, where it's like, I 110% feel the same way. We're living in a spiritual vacuum, which technically kind of makes sense with my teenager analogy in the sense that, you're a little kid, you believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and all these things, and then, as a teenager, when everything gets thrown into upheaval, you don't know what you believe anymore. I don't know, maybe Richard Dawkins, whatever, And I think what really crystallized this for me, where in the book she was talking about, she was reading an article in Life magazine around 1991 by Lee Atwater. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read it to you, because I really think it crystallizes what happened, or what is happening, exactly what's going on right now. In those days, I still read Life magazine, and in the February 1991 issue, I came across something that totally caught me by surprise. It was an article by Lee Atwater, the Republican mastermind who'd helped elect Reagan and Bush with slash and burn campaigns that played to our country's worst impulses and ugliest fears. I think after last election we can relate to that. He was the man behind the famous race-baiting Willie Horton ad in 1988, the man who believed in winning at all costs. He was also mortally ill with brain cancer and not yet 40 years old. Atwater's piece in Life magazine read like a deathbed conversion. The bare-knuckled political brawler was having an attack of conscience. And despite coming from someone who I disagreed with on just about everything, it was like reading my own thoughts printed out on the page. Quote, before I was struck with cancer, I felt something stirring in American society. It was a sense among the people of the country, Republicans and Democrats alike, that something was missing from our lives. Something crucial. I was trying to position the Republican Party to take advantage of it. But I wasn't exactly sure what it was. My illness helped me to see that what was missing in our society is what was missing in me. A little heart and a lot of brotherhood. The 1980s were about acquiring wealth, power, prestige. I should know. I acquired more wealth, power, and prestige than most. But you can acquire all you want and still feel empty. What power wouldn't I trade for a little more time with my family? What price wouldn't I pay for an evening with friends? It took a deadly illness to put me eye to eye with that truth. But it is a truth that the country, caught up in its ruthless ambitions and moral decay, can learn on my dime. I don't know who will lead us through the 90s, but they must be made to speak to the spiritual vacuum at the heart of American society, this tumor of the soul. Yes, I most certainly agree with Hillary Clinton. That's what happened, and that's what's happening. So definitely give her book a read. Even though Hillary can be a little guarded and a little pushy sometimes, she really has some fantastic ideas, and they're definitely worth listening to. What the fuck happened?